Boom! Think I'm on live. I do believe. No technical difficulties this time. I just had to pull myself together emotionally to make sure I was good. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I appreciate those of you that have come. Let me give some acknowledge in the chat. Hopefully everybody can hear me also. I still have PTSD, as everybody knows. Let me go up in the chat here and see who all is here. Starting at the top. Joyce, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Kyle, what's up, man? Thanks for being here. I do appreciate everybody coming. I didn't know how my title for this, I thought would probably turn some people off. So I appreciate you all coming. Cosmic Joe, thank you for being here. Bernard, what's up, brother? Thank you for being here. I can never pronounce that right. Tom, thanks for being here, man. Thank you. Boom, Jay, thank you for being here. Appreciate you. Right on. Always appreciate everybody that takes the time to come here. Rosie, my patient friend, thank you very much. Hopefully you got my email from just a little bit ago, and I'll hit you again a little bit after dinner and stuff tonight. We'll set something up. Thank you very much for being patient with me, Rosie, and hanging in there. And thank you for coming over to Patreon also. I appreciate that. Boom, Jessica, what's up? Thank you. Yeah, Jessica, I think I should actually make the time for this show 3:08 instead of 3 o'clock, because it seems to be about 3:08 each time I get on with whatever. So maybe I need to make it change to 3:08 p.m. Nothing better than accuracy, Kyle, cool. I think I got everybody that's here. Urso, thank you for being here. Cool. Thank you. Midwest Night Watchers. Thank you for being here, Gerald and Jane. Very, very cool. Got a lot of appreciation for their work, and they do a lot of good research. Gerald had presented something about pertaining to the Yehoshua, the Jesus bloodline, and some of the DNA strains, things that they're doing. And I noticed a few people just kind of jumped on and copied that, and neither Gerald, Jane, nor Jessica got any credit for it at all, but other people did. That trips me out, but I guess we have to live with it, you know what I mean? But it pretty much sucks. Cool, I think, Genocide, thank you for being here. Oh, cool. Oh, sorry, I guess I'm still far behind here. So make sure I acknowledge everybody. John, thank you for being here. Thiso Carper, thank you for being here. Roger Blair, thank you for being here. Right on. Summer Blaze, thank you for being here. Oh, cool. There's like quite a few people in here. That's cool, man. That's awesome. Bounty Hunter, thank you for being here. Lori Ladd, thank you for being here. I always love your last name because, to be honest, I was kind of a Cheryl Ladd fan on Charlie's Angels back in the day. Bigfoot Dwarf, thank you for being here, brother. Good to see you, man. Thank you. Great to see you. Very cool. Very cool. What a nice group of people. Excellent. Iris or Orias. Oh God, I'm terrible with names. Thank you for being here, though. Sorry for the names that I do butcher. I've been a butcher of names for quite a while. So, Jane, thank you for being here. Very cool. Great group of people. Great group of people. And I'm starting to notice people are starting to come from several different platforms I've been on at some point. So that's really cool. Hospice. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. just to have a great appreciation. We'll go through all that. Okay, there we go. There we go. See where I get us started here. So we'll just start off right here. All right, now that hopefully I've said hello to everybody, and I appreciate every one of you being here. Again, I didn't know how good this this title would go over, because it's probably a turnoff for a lot of people, but it's been something that I've been dealing with, and I think it's very worth mentioning, and I also want to give a thanks to people as well. So before we start that, let me just start here. All right. Exactly 1 week ago today, I lost my father. He passed last Sunday, and I'll be honest, I've just been having a really difficult time dealing with it. And he was on, the reason why I bring up hospice is because about 5 years ago, he was diagnosed with congested heart failure. And he fought it well. He was pretty far along when it started showing symptoms. So he battled that for years, and he was strong. He hung on and did really well, but eventually it caught up with him. And he was 93 when he passed, so he was not a young man. I'm not even that anymore, and I'm the youngest of four. But he the last 3 months, I put him on hospice. And that's, just the term of hospice itself, I think rings some things that are odd. So we'll go over that a little bit. But this picture was taken when he was inducted, or it was a celebration, the Kansas Sports Hall of Fame, I believe it was. I can't remember now, but that was probably around 2018. This picture was taken, I think. Maybe 19, but I think it was 18, actually. Anyway, he was very influential in my world. I had a really nice childhood. I had a nice life, really gifted. When I got injured, I had taken these brain injuries, and I also had almost died of septic blood a few years ago in 2020. And I mean, he was there for me the whole time. So it was an honor for me to be near him and help him during the whole time of that, of going through that and everything. But so I want to give everybody a real big thanks for the overwhelming amount of condolences I've gotten from so many people. Some people, so I'm really, really blessed for that, and it does help. And I wanted to thank everybody for that. All right. Let's see. Just a couple. This time, believe it or not, I don't have very many pictures at all, like maybe 5. So you won't have to deal with me fumbling around like most of the time. I'm sure that will delight some of you no end. Just to talk about this a little bit, which I think, like, for example, when I first was considering putting him on hospice, it sounds so terminal. You know what I mean? It's something I had avoided for a while until finally he had declined enough that I had to take other action. It was starting to get beyond my personal ability to just manage it all. So that's when I brought in the hospice, and I learned quickly that my understanding of it was entirely correct. To me, hospice meant like, man, terminated. You're like gone, finished, unalived, to where the point that the lady that came and actually set up the coordinator said that they had some people that told them, well, hey, just give me the shot now. And she wasn't playing either, So anyway, what I learned is, though, like for me, it was very hard to shift from what was prevention with him and doing preventative things to shifting to comfortability and comfort. And that's actually what the hospice was. So because somebody goes on hospice doesn't mean that they're immediately terminal, but it's the stages that go just before a passing. And the team that came in, it's not what people think. It was not 24-hour that we had. It was 2 ladies that came in for 2 hours a week each. So 4 hours. But I'll tell you, it helped. And there was a hotline I could call, like if he fell and stuff like that. And I say it helped. It helped amazingly. He fell quite a bit, and sometimes it wasn't that easy to get him up. And I was worried I might hurt him because I'm not trained in that. And to have people come in and help was really beneficial. So I want to give a shout out to that team. Mercy from Tanzania. We had some great conversations. She's a traveling nurse. And then, Francine and also Stacy. Those three, and Yolanda, of course. Those four that came through. 2 of them were crisis, but the other 2, 3 were crisis. The other 2 were the ones that came each week. So I just want to give a real shout out to them and what they're doing, and to people that work in the area of hospice. You talk about a hard gig, man, that's got to be a hard gig. Not just as primary caretaker was it hard for me, but for them to have to go to individual houses, several a day, people that are dealing in that situation, that's really commendable. And I think that's tough work, and I think it's real, and I think it counts. And I want to give a shout out to that team and to people that do this type of work, because it helped me. It helped me to adjust, to get some new tactics, some new better things to help take care of my father better and make sure he was comfortable before he passed, which is, always already stressful for everybody. So anyway, that's just giving a shout out to hospice, and just saying that, I had found later that some people live a year or 2 on hospice even. They go a lot longer than my dad did, for 3 months. So that's just a little bit. I think it's good to go over that and just touch on it. So I know some people sent me emails saying, are you on hospice? No, it wasn't me. It's not me. It was my father. So that's that. Now, and I'm just going to keep touching on a few things, okay? I personally had a hard time dealing with it in terms of I knew what was coming, but there's really no preparation. I tried to prepare, but there's no preparation. Look, I work with earthbound spirits. I'm a medium. I've done a lot of work with the other side, okay? And I can see to a degree. But when it came down to this and your own personal parents, it's different. It's like what Yoda had told Luke. It said, like, when great emotions involved, it's hard to see, So that's the situation there. Like when my mother passed, I was so, excuse me, so grief stricken that I couldn't communicate with her. It took quite some time. You know what I mean? So this situation here is somewhat similar, and I'm going to tell you why, okay? Why it is this has been triple intense for me. And it's something I've shared with you all before that follow me, but you may not have really caught it or just forgot. Okay, look, in a car accident in 2010, I went over all that on my near-death experience, but I sustained in that accident 4 catastrophic traumatic brain injuries, okay? And I went over this before, but we're going to focus on one specifically, all right? I took a hematoma to the frontal lobe, okay, pal. I took a hematoma to the temporal quarter lobe here, okay? I took a hematoma to the brain stem, just below the cerebellum. And then I had what's called DFA, which is diffusal axonal, which means upon impact, my brain turned in the case and swole, okay? And it also and it creates also like blood spots on the brain. That's one reason they didn't cut into my head, and I think another reason why I'm still the person I was to a degree. Anyway, so what we're going to focus on here, and what I talk about, and Spirit told me it's important to talk about this because there may be somebody out here this helps. A lot of people have had TBI, and it's called, quote unquote, the invisible injury, because you often can't tell, and I've been told that a lot for people that I've known, like my whole life. And everybody commented when I first got like out of the hospital, how, well, it's still him. You're still you, and stuff like that. And they couldn't tell. It's almost like you weren't even in the hospital. I heard that a lot. Okay, so what we're going to focus on here is the frontal lobe. I took a hematoma to the frontal lobe, and that is serious in terms of what I struggled with the most. People said they couldn't tell. You're just the same. Yeah, until I go off on your ass. You know what I'm saying? That's one thing that happened. And okay, so like for example, when I really putting it together and studying my injuries themselves, I had done a presentation for. In fact, it's the first time I had spoken publicly after my accident, and it was to the Traumatic Brain Injury of Kansas, the Traumatic Brain Injury Association of Kansas. These doctors and these nurses, and they wanted me to talk about my perception of what my near-death experience was, because I've got a degree in psych and I can put it in a way that kind of is not just spiritual, but kind of try to analyze it scientifically also. So I just did that. But the lady that came on after me was the head of KU Med at that time, and she did a presentation specifically on frontal lobe. And it brought tears to my eyes because a few of those things I had to work through or suffered from or still do. Okay, so for example, I chose this one because it shows one, the injuries I took. One, you've got the frontal lobe there, you've got the temporal lobe there, you've got just below the cerebellum, the brain stem. You don't see DFA on there, but that's a little bit different. We can talk about that later. Anyway, so this one, frontal lobe, motor control. Okay, I only had problems with that when I first quote unquote remembered who I was and woke up. All right, thinking, I couldn't think straight at first. And when I say that, in memory, at first my memory was kind of off. This was all until I cleared out. Okay, and what a clearing out for a brain patient is, traumatic brain injury survivor, is clearing out is when you remember who you are, and pow, everything comes back. You clear out. I cleared out about 2 weeks after I'd been awake, okay, conscious. But my memory, I tell people I couldn't remember who I was. People say, man, but I came and saw you. It was still you. It's kind of like you might have been punch drunk or something, but it was still you. I said, well, first of all, it's a gifted performance by a good actor. Number two is that I had not cleared out. And when I say I didn't know who I was, my pattern of decision-making eluded me. And for somebody like me, that is everything, okay? Not that I didn't know who I was, my name, stuff like that, but my pattern of decision-making eluded me. And I'm so thankful to God that cleared. Okay, reasoning, dealing with the injuries, I had problems reasoning with that. Self-control, I went through impulsivity. Okay, problems like that. Also, I'm sorry. One of the things that about frontal lobe is that survivors have a tendency to really go off verbally and tell somebody off verbally before they can catch it. That happened to me. I used to be an anger management trainer, okay, and all that stuff like the wave and all that. I wasn't going the wave, wind up, agitation, verbal explosion. I was going like from W to E. I was skipping several ones, and I didn't catch it first. I wasn't like that before. So that's something I had to go to therapy for. And I'm sorry. And that was like my brother saying, man, you always had a short fuse and you spit acid. He said, the stuff you say to people sometimes, I've seen people want to kill you. He said, and now since the TBI, it's really, the fuse is really short and explosive. So I had to, go to therapy and work on that. And we'll say that honestly, okay? Some things we need help with, all right? Maintaining social expectations, not as much, except for I just tell somebody off. Planning, no, not so much. I didn't have that. Abstract thinking, no. So it's just like, certain things I had, but it was emotional for me, an emotional regulation. And in a situation like this, dealing with the death like this, the grief, it comes on 5 times as strong as it would have before. The emotions are so strong. You know what I mean? That's what's different about me now. So when people talk about empathic stuff, I don't say a lot. But the truth is, I take things to heart. I feel things. I had all these doctors telling me, oh, you're an example of neuroplasticity. And at that time, even though I got some psychology knowledge, I really didn't know what that was. I had to go, look it up and start really investigating what is neuroplasticity. Why these people keep telling me that? And that's just when you actually have an injury and your brain forms new neural pathways to function. Okay. And I noticed there were things like when I was recovering, and once I got through a certain phase of recovering, it's like I could look, I'm nobody's fool. All right. I understand information and I ingest information quickly and efficiently. I always have. And I noticed after these injuries, once I cleared out and stuff and got on the thing, it was like double. I could really look at something and just see the information in it directly, as well as clairvoyantly. I was very high on the clairvoyant scale. That's very just that's something I was born with. Like a lot of people that listen to me and are tuned into this, my stuff was turned on, very turned on, always. Then I take these brain injuries, but I could always hide it from people until these brain injuries, and it started coming on so strong in these waves. It's like I get hit by waves that I just started saying something because it seemed like if I didn't, I was like betraying God. And that's what I was maybe doing before by ignoring my gifts and hiding them. So that way just changed things. You know what I mean? The people I'd known my whole life started catching it. Like stuff like, are you psychic or something? You know, they know me my whole life. And it was just, so that part was kind of bizarre. You know, anyway, let's move on from this picture. Boom. All right. Don't worry, y'all. Only a couple more. This one, I think this is an important one. And I kind of just went over this, so I should have probably already switched to this picture, but what's that guy say? So sue me. Anyway. And I just wanted to go over the frontal lobe thing to really give you an idea of like kind of what I went through and how that is that the depth and the grief, how it's so much stronger than it was to where it can become overwhelming. Okay, I thought this was always cool because this is somewhat correct. I went through that shock and disbelief. At first, I thought, man, I hit my head and I got knocked out. And then they gave me drugs, so I'd be in a coma, and they're making money off me, and they're blowing it up. What really happened to me? It can't possibly have been that bad. You know, I went through that stage for a while until I had to get my medical file, and it was bigger than an encyclopedia, thick, and I freaked out. I had to take it to a therapist, and we went over it. And I mean, it blew me away. I said, this couldn't be me. Because it kept saying I had traumatic brain injury. I was like, but I wasn't in the war. I'm not a soldier. And I remember one of the therapists looked at me and said, maybe it's a little worse. I said, what do you mean by that? They said, well, the soldiers, our soldiers are trained, for potential death situations, brain injuries, or potential death. And for you, it's different. You're on your way to work and bam, you're being told it's 2 months later. And you're going through all sorts of stuff. No preparation, no training. So all I know I could do is just sit there and listen. Okay, so some anger came with that. I was pissed off. I got hurt. I was mad at the woman that was involved in it. You know, that hit me. I was all sorts of stuff. You know, I had problems behind that, legal problems. It was just horrible. Okay, and I went through sorrow and grieving because when I woke up, look, my crib was gone. My car I had a nice ride. My car was compacted already. You know, and they were saying I couldn't process information on top of that. So I was really feeling sorry for myself, depressed, grieving. I went through guilt. I was felt guilt because I had gotten jacked up. And number two, suddenly I was a burden to my family. They went through all sorts of months of me being in the hospital, thinking I wasn't going to survive for several days. You know, and then I kept thinking I'm just a burden to everybody now that's in my family. And then I would go to the traumatic brain injury support groups. And it's like every survivor had very much noticeable issues. You know what I mean? Whether it be motor skills, memory, speech, whatever the case is. And a lot of those I don't have. So I would hear from other survivors, I'm not doing as good as you. And it would make me feel like shit, straight up. They didn't even mean it that way, but it's one of those things that had that effect. Okay. So I remember I had so many doctors looking at me during the time I was recovering and all that. And I think I know more why now. you know, this neuroplasticity thing and all that. But they were looking at, a lot of doctors were looking at me. Some of them I didn't particularly care for. And they were asking me constantly, do you want to kill yourself? Do you want to kill yourself? Are you suicidal? Are you suicidal? No. But one day I said, man, it probably would have been easier on my family if I just would have died. Oh, wrong thing to say. Wrong thing to say. That went to cats asking me if I was going to try to kill myself, if I was having suicidal ideations, all this stuff I was not. I would have told them finally, hey, look, I didn't survive just to take myself out. I just said that I've been a burden to people. That's all it was. But that takes you into another deal. Okay, going next, depression. Still deal with it now, straight up. For the frontal lobe shot and then the hematoma to the brainstem also is a combination of problems with depression. Okay, and I used to, you know, actually work therapeutically with counselors and therapists that dealt with depression with our clients. Heck, I didn't think I was going to get it. You know what I'm saying? So that's one of those things there. Denial. I would have, you know, this kind of goes along with shock and disbelief for me anyway. And denial that I was a little bit different than I was before, if nothing else, just emotionally. You know what I mean? And maybe my volition to do some things had changed. You know what I mean? So acceptance, that's about where I'm at now. And well, I guess I'll always be at, is acceptance. So that's just something I give out for those people, those of you that are caretakers for somebody that has TBI, or you that have maybe had a TBI, and they're not all like mine, catastrophic. It can be small. You tripped and hit your head and things are just different. You know what I mean? So that's something to be aware of. One more thing concerning TBI, and that's it. In fact, there's only almost out of pictures. That's great. Actually flying through this really good for a change. Or I'm just becoming old school with my primitive way of doing this. Either or, I will accept. Just a little one, I think it's good. Because this is always just one of those representations that looks good. You know, or you could compare that to a tooth that's like rotten on the bottom or something. But really it is like what you see. And that's why they call it the invisible, you know, injury. Because a lot of times people can't tell, depending, especially unless you've got, you know, noticeably motor dexterity problems or dexterity problems in your speech or things people will notice. For me, it's a lot of time people will say, if you hadn't told me, I never would have known. Yeah, I'm honored by that. You know, but when I say I have a very real near-death experience, I'm not lying, okay? And when I say I've seen something and been through something and I saw some angelics, these super nanofem that helped me to heal, I'm not lying, okay? And I'm proof of it. For all y'all into neuroplasticity, this ain't talk, this is real. But by the same token, look, when I first came forward, I chewed a few people out. They'll tell you, I don't like Barry Littleton. He said this to me. He told me to fuck off. Yeah, I probably did. And I have no resentment about it. No sadness, none. No regret, zero. If you did something, you tripped that line, you triggered me, you probably got dealt with. I'm Generation X, and I'll tell you to suck it in a heartbeat. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. To the other side of this, you look fine, you know, but fatigue, yeah, been there. Headache, I was blessed to not really have those. Visual problems, my eyes are sensitive to light more than they were before. But outside of that, I've been blessed not to have much of that. Difficulty processing, no. Memory problems, no. Can't concentrate, been there a little bit, but that, I can't say that's strictly TBI, you know, that's just life. Coordination issues, only when I first woke up. Very blessed to not have much of that. Motor dexterity is all right. Sleep disturbance, always from encounters. TBI certainly didn't help it out, none. Loss of motor skills, no. Emotional liability, yes. Personality changes, yes. In terms of little PTSD type stuff. You know what I mean? I get a little stressed when I see someone just being such an idiot on the road, weaving in front of people, doing things that shows they've never been hurt in a vehicle. And you don't even have to be doing that type of stuff, and you're putting people's life in danger. I might see a big accident and don't really respond well. When my mother was near terminal and in ICU, I was sitting in there, and I remember sitting next to my dad, and it was the sound of those machines. I started sweating and having like palpitations and breathing heavy. My dad looked at me and said, "You all right, son?" I said, "I think I got to leave for a little bit." And I left and came back. I realized then it was cellular trauma. Although I may have been knocked out or unconscious for weeks, in a coma for almost 2 weeks, but the body and the cellular structure still holds it. So that's one of those things. Anyway, so I guess that goes under sensitivity to noise in that way. Impulsivity, I dealt with that. I wanted to go out and kick it. I wanted to celebrate being alive big time. Irritability, didn't want to have nothing to do with nobody for the most part. I was just tripped out. Confusion, that comes for anybody who's been in a bad accident. It's confusing dealing with some things. Anyway, that's just a few of the things. I just wanted to bring this up. It's not exact for every patient, every TBI survivor, but it's just a baseline of stuff to look at. You know what I'm saying? All right. That's all the pictures. So anyway, that's just something I wanted to touch on. All right, was the grieving process, the amount of thanks that I gotten from people, the condolences, also address the TBI and just why some things that I feel more emotional, and any information that can help people concerning TBIs is important. It's much more common than is believed. A lot of people deal with it, a lot of caretakers, a lot of family members, and there's certain things like resources that can be done or just people to talk to about TBI that's very beneficial. It's much more frontline than it was before, just like CTE. And by the way, one of the protocols that I'd met a natural doctor, Dr. Clark, on top of everybody else I was dealing with, but he had put me on a regimen that was similar to the one that was done by that doctor that Will Smith played in Concussion. It took me a long time to sit down and watch that movie. I just couldn't for some reason. But when I did, I realized, okay, this gentleman does like things like fish oil, was it tree bark? A few things that Dr. Clark had prescribed. Another one was SAMe, SAME, which helped with my depression a lot. It still does. Not a cure-all, but it helps a lot. Okay, so it's little things like that were natural that he had prescribed to me that helped me in some phases of my recovery. So anyway, let's see. Go down and just Auntie Erin, thank you for being here. I didn't see you earlier. Thank you for coming. Oh, I guess I'm way behind again, aren't I? I guess I should go to new comments. I'll just keep going down from here. I'd like to acknowledge everybody that's here. Oh, there's Gerald and Jane. Oh, my pleasure, Gerald. You do really good work, really good things a lot of people don't look at. So that's super cool. It's been a pleasure working with you. Had a really good session with Jane too. So that's something else I did want to say. I've started doing sessions again. I felt behind. Okay, I just wasn't able to do it with all the stuff that was going on. That's settled down a little bit right now, and I've got a couple of people waiting, but what I need to do is work more and do more sessions. So if you're anybody that wanted a session with me and either I fell behind or lost contact or something happened, please email me again. If you're somebody that wants to hook up, shoot me an email. I'd love to schedule as many people as I can and keep working. And it makes me feel better. It helps on the other side, and it's good work. You know what I mean? So anybody that wants a session, let me know. Whether it's earthbound spirit release, past life regressions, God, those are incredible. Or trauma release, negative identity dissolvement, stop smoking, weight loss, all these things. I really enjoy the hypnosis sessions a lot. I think they're more beneficial to clients than just readings. We can do a reading, you know, but it comes to like, man, is this person right? Are they really gifted? To me, those aren't as rewarding as the client themselves going in and doing the work themselves while under hypnosis and getting the answers they want and seeing the truth. That's where it's at to me. And the fact that, you know, I listened to this person talking about there is no superconscious, there is no divine over self, all that's not real. Bull. They've not done the work. They've not been under real deep like theta hypnosis or even delta. That is true. There is a part of us that is still with the creator. You know, of all the terms that it's called, sometimes this one always intrigued me, this book. Y'all know I got issues with this book, but there is information in there. And one of them is what they call the superconscious is the thought adjuster. And if the thought adjuster is always that part is in perfection with the creator that adjusts our thoughts to like what are positive. And, you know, when you start dealing with like negative identities, and we've got those 4 components to ourself, the mind, body, spirit, and the negative self. Okay. The negative self reacts in a way to things that formed it from the negative self breaks into negative identities through trauma. And what the negative identities do is react in a way that is detrimental to the self. Okay. But the part of us that is the spirit, AKA the thought adjuster, the superconscious, the divine overself, whatever you want to call it. Okay. Sorry. But the truth is, when dealing with that, it's positive. We're positive and we're energy beings, you know? And when you start dealing with imagery and these things, these concepts, you'll find that some of these imagery for negative identities can be so huge. It's incredible. I mean, the size of universes. And then there's you. You get this, but it can be dissolved by the real you. That's the energy part of you. Okay. The positive part. And that's your real energy that negative identity is taken through the negative self, and negative cognition. And I can't tell y'all enough. I hear so much people saying, oh, these outside the archons and this and that and the trolls and all this stuff. Hey, okay, yes, they're definitely outside inorganic beings that are negative, that try to influence us by all means, feed on us and other things like that. Not taking anything from that. But what I will say, the base layer, we're dealing with layers. The first layer you need to get over before worried about outside influences is your own negative self, your own negative cognition, okay? And the self and the negative identities, the default mode network of the brain, how that stuff keeps repeating over and over and over and over again. So you've got that, you know, the default mode network of the brain is also called the temporal lobe or temporal area, as well as like where I had the diffusal axonal, or where I had one of the hematomas, which is to that layer. They call this a temporal area, but they call the default mode network temporal because you can start thinking so many negative things right now about yourself that it starts projecting into the future, manifesting negative things for you in the future through your own psychokinetic energy. And you also start focusing on negative in the past instead of the good things or who you are right now, positivity, and generating that towards the future. That's what journey spacing is, to clear the default mode network. Anyway, not going to go too far into that. But the point is that we have our own demons, our own dark stuff. We got to deal with that first. That's why at the point of death, the last things we're thinking is important. Our perspectives is very important. Too important, for instance, to allow these people, you know, I was going to touch on this, and I was going to see if maybe Jessica wanted to come up, but I was going to touch on this because it takes us back into that soul trap thing and all that, and that goes hard right now in the media. That's really a popular thing right now. The soul trap, the light is the false, and all that stuff. Okay, and when you start really looking, where the hell did that actually come from? Truly, the origin of it. I'd heard something recently from a friend that told me that it started. Let's just, the last picture. This is the last picture, actually. and I'll only talk about what I know of this because I haven't had the time to fully research it yet, but I will try. Okay, where did all that, the whole false light thing start at? And this reincarnation cycle and this whole thing that is feeding this war between the light and the dark. I was told it was this lady started it. Helena Blavatsky, or however you pronounce it. Okay. And when looking into her, this was around the 1850s or 60s. She was around, and it was connected. What I found was it was David Icke, Wikipedia, whatever. It was Icke that was talking about her more and connecting her to also the Rothschilds, and that she was in that and she was influenced by them, and that she's the one that created this whole thing about the soul trap and about the reincarnation cycle, and the archons are the ones that are feeding on us and all that stuff. That she read that, and she took that from the Gnostic text. But when I looked into her work a little bit, not a lot, so I'm not an expert on her, so I want to throw that out there. But the little bit of time I had to just look a little bit, I couldn't find anything of her really saying that. What I did see was a lot of her talking about the Bardo Thodol, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and the different levels of Bardo. Okay, and the Bardo, are like the astral levels and things like that. The Uranta book calls them the mansion worlds behind Yehoshua, when he said, in my father's house are many mansions. These are these mansion worlds. Paramahansa Yogananda in the Autobiography of a Yogi, he had talked about, when he saw his teacher, Sri Yukteswar, appeared to him after he had died. And he had a silver shimmering around him. And Sri was telling him, I manifested like on this certain level of the Bardo due to the spiritual practices I had on earth and my knowledge. I manifested on this level, and I think in the Uranta book, they talk, it might be, is it 7 or 8 mansion worlds? Sorry, I can't remember exactly. But anyway, it's just interesting food for thought. But if you start looking at it in terms of Bardo Thodol, Tibetan Book of the Dead, that's many levels we can exist on. It also talks about what happens the days after death. Okay, so that is what I saw her representing the most in the materials I looked at. Okay, it was never this thing for the soul trap deal. So I just asked, if everybody's into chat GPT, whatever, I asked that thing. What is the origin of the soul trap and the false light? And, it said that it's a newer concept from the internet. And I started asking, trying to even research what was this woman's connection to the Rothschilds, and I couldn't find any. Doesn't mean it's not true. I'm not an expert in this stuff, this woman, this weird stuff, but it's just interesting where this all begins and ends, and it's something for y'all to look up, or y'all that know more. Educate me, educate the world. I don't know. You might know everything about this woman and what she did, and maybe she's completely guilty of what they're saying. I don't know. But it's something to look at, and it's good food for thought. Boom, if nothing else. So but the whole origin of that, and it seems like it's a newer concept. This whole thing against the light, against this, and the truth is, they're telling people that, and it's just giving that option of this soul trap stuff is enough to get people doubting, to where when it's time to go into the light at death, they won't do it, and then they wind up being trapped earthbound spirits in pain, giving other people pain, tripping on the things that they had problems with when they didn't cross. And then they're attached to people, and they're expressing themselves through negative behavior patterns. That is a problem, folks, a big problem. Okay, not to mention you've got these people that are all doing these channeling now. And I just watched, that real popular lady, I don't even say any names, but using a ghost box and asking questions, is this Charlie Kirk? Is this and that, or what? What is the point of that when what was responding to her was obviously, for lack of a better word, demonic? Negative inorganic beings that exist right here next to this dimension, next to us. And they know us, and they push through any way they can. Think about what John Vivenko and I talked about Or what Jessica and I have talked about is that on the other side, these portals, these holes, some types of portals on the other side have thousands of beings trying to squeeze through all at once to get in this dimension. And those that are able to squeeze through emerge like in collective consciousness form, which is a type of orb form. You know, but when you think about the different ways they're trying to push through, trying to manipulate people, trying to get the loose going, the negative psychokinetic energy, the deadly orgone radiation, how they're trying to get that going is through autosuggestion. And it's getting people trapped. I know I've helped some people in that situation. This is serious, folks. It's a real battle between light and dark, positive and negative. It's not bullshit. The divine field is real. And a lot of these people are lying and they're not doing the work and they're just telling people crap. That's messing people up. You know, autosuggestion is all it takes. And when you talk about, you know, hypnosis, it's based on autosuggestion, whether done in relaxation or by shock. All sorts of ways to do inductions on people. Enough of that. And this lady, don't need to see her no more. Anyway, I just want to throw that out there so that, you know, this is one of those things that's just worth investigating yourself. But, you know, when it comes to the death process and the way that we cross, it's not done by a lot of our society the right way in terms of the way our elderly are honored, the way that the death transition process can be escorted. Coolest I've seen during a funeral was my friend Paul Adams. His mother was Buddhist and Vietnamese. It was really interesting, the ceremony, the different ceremony. I watched spirits come and surround her box, angelics, and help her cross over. It was very interesting. And the intonement they were using had a lot to do with it also. So anyway, going forward, but that's just, you know, and the light isn't like, the light, one thing is it's like a road. Okay. It's a part of the creator. And whatever these people are telling you, I can promise you this, I've crossed over almost about 700 earthbounds now out of several hundred people. Okay. But it was one process is that when you start talking about God, creator in a personal way, not religious, the creator and love, the light comes. They start seeing it when they could not before. I can already see the light. I can see loved ones in the light, and then they'll start seeing it. Recently, I started talking even more during sessions, and people when they're emerged, they're saying, well, you were describing everything I was saying. You could see it. Yeah, I can see. You know what I mean? But anyway, but that's, you know, just point being that there's a connection there. So I don't care what these people say. I don't care what the cat suit women say from Farsight. Don't give a damn. Yeah, I like the cat suits too, but who's protecting them? How are they protected when they're viewing things? To tell people don't go into the light. The guy that runs it. I'm sorry, they're not doing it for me. I've had a near-death experience, 2 of them actually. I can see, okay, medium-wise, I've worked with earthbound spirits. So I don't care what those people are saying. The love and the light is connected. Sorry, I know people are going to get mad at me. Oh, he's put down that. I don't care, man, because I don't like seeing people being misled. It makes more work for me, and it makes the earthbound spirit level get even denser on this planet. And that's one of the things we have to start changing here, is crossing over these earthbounds that are trapped here. Talk about a reincarnation cycle. We have that ability to choose, but they have choose to not go in the light, then they don't progress. So that's part of the thing. So it's not that, you know, it's like this huge trap. It's a road. So you want to use the light to take the road directly to where you're going, whatever city you're going, wherever. You don't have to take the road. You can get off the road and walk in the wilderness and hike and do all that, but you better have plenty of supplies and you better have plenty of protection. Going off the road is dangerous in terms of what you might experience, especially concerning hostile entities that are trying to devour your luminosity, your awareness and your luminosity. at that point. That's a serious threat. And when you look at the ecosystems of Earth, it's very predatorial. So it's foolish to think, especially off that road, you're not going to encounter a whole lot of predators, just like you would walking through the wilderness, but much worse in terms of you're dealing with a lot of these that are masters. Some of these inorganic beings are masters of perception and masters of deception, masters of hiding in electron impulses, masters of blending into phantasmagorical images. Anyway, sorry, I feel like I'm preaching here. Lyrans, interesting. Sydney Jane, welcome. Okay, I guess I'm once again way behind on comments. Greetings, Glit. Thank you for being here. Wow, so that's 3:13. So I'm only 45 minutes behind, right? Try again here. Wow, I can't seem to move this down. Oh, there it goes. New comments. Boom, there we go. Okay, I'll just start at the bottom here. I'm having trouble manipulating this thing. Leah Sims, thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the nice comment, too. John, thanks for being here. Yeah, see, that's somebody that probably knows a lot more about her than I do, but I just couldn't find the connection that Icky was making. Doesn't mean it's not true, but I just couldn't, or sorry, Ike was making. I just couldn't find it, but I don't know that much about her, and I didn't have enough time to really research super deep. So, anybody knows more, please lay it on us, because I'm very grateful for any information. Hey, what's happening, Ness? Oh, thank you. It's all internet mirrors. Smoke and mirrors. That's all it is. Like my brother always says. He said, man, you make sure to tell everybody you were always weird. Those experiences didn't start after your TBI. You've been weird your whole life. Tell everybody. Okay, bro. He said, you've been weird since childhood, man. Oh, yeah, okay, I got you. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Son of the Phoenix. Thank you for being here, too. Oh, very cool. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. I got to go back up. Sorry, folks. My technical skills leave something to be desired. Sorry you suffered that loss, Leah. This question here, I could give you an example, Aaron, something that I encountered. I had a client and they're gifted, okay? And what happened was they had, I think it was 9 or was it 11? Either way, they had about 9 earthbound spirits attached to them. And most of them were all family members that chose not to cross over, but knew that this individual had gifts and chose to join with them. Some were ancestral that joined with them. Okay, and so when I started crossing them, all right, like when I got to the third one, when the light is there and they're seeing others, they're seeing one of the people that I crossed, and they're in the angelic type of light. Technically, like with wings, people will see that. I think they're friction shields, but that's neither here nor there. But people will describe that, seeing like wings or like a golden halo or things around them. So, and then by the time I did like the 4th and 5th, the other 2 were helping. And that went all the way to like the 9th one. And they're telling them, hey, come on, it's all right. It's all right. So whatever change that happens in that light, it's definitely not Earth time anyway. We know that, but I mean, it's really different. I don't think it's linear or any of those things, but I mean, because that was really quick. So it's like if I was wanting to be corny with y'all, if I wanted to be corny with y'all, I would use Jimmy Stewart, and it's a Wonderful Life. Is that the name of it? Yeah, Wonderful Life. And he's every time the bell rings, an angel gets its wings, hot dog or whatever. Anyway, I mean they get their wings quicker than a mug, but they're whatever the process is that they change they go through. It's in a different time zone than we deal with for sure. So I found that very interesting. In terms of just what to do in terms of that and when to cross and when not to. And that's why I think our last thoughts and our perspective on the death process has a lot to do with what we experience. I'm a firm believer that if 50 of us in an auditorium, boom, it gets blown, we all pass at once. Very few of us are going to be in the same place after that. Depending. Now, you go through shock, there could be some relative association there for time, but it's going to change through what people's experiences. You know what I mean? They're not going to stay there. Things will change. I think the difference in that would be the client I had that kept the earthbound attached to this individual, said that they recognized them as being one of their troops from not the Civil War, the oh gosh, that big place where people go visit the war field. Oh, what's the name of it? Gettysburg, was it? Anyway, but they said they recognized him from there. And they joined with this individual and said, hey, I'm not going to let them forget. I'm not going to let them forget the war. I'm not going to let them forget nothing. And what happened is this client is expressing the behaviors. They were obsessed with going and see things about battlefields, visiting battlefields, historical places. And that's what this earthbound was pushing them to do. All right. And it was also a past life connection as well. So, that stuff there starts, joining in. And I'm bringing this up because this individual said that a lot of their troop was still out there on that battlefield fighting. They're like, in the way this earthbound spirit described it to me was what in Doctor Who I think we would call a time lock. Okay, like they're in a time lock and their phantoms doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. And that a lot of them didn't cross over. Some of them did, but a lot of them didn't. And they're still out there. That's what the earthbound said. And one of the things to getting it to cross was difficult. I got it to, but it was based on the others that are still out there in the field. Couldn't leave them because it was their order that got them all killed. That's what it said. At least that regiment, that part of the deal. Anyway, sorry, I'm just bringing up stuff. You don't hear me promoting gurus. There's good information to look at, okay? And I have no religion. So please don't try to tie me like I'm a Buddhist. I'm not a Buddhist. I have no religion, but I can tell you this much. I have died. I have seen the Creator. I'm here to talk about it. So I'm not swayed by a lot of that stuff, okay? I don't want anybody put me in the religious deal. I have an aversion to religions, but I do look at different religions to see how they address crossing. And when it comes to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Bardo Thodol, you can't really put it down unless you've read it and you're an expert at it. It's got some things that I experienced during my death process, which would be like the panoramic life review. Just something I want to throw out there, right? It's interesting because at some point, everybody acts like they're experts when we're not. I'm not, you're not, nobody is, all right? The angel of death. And what did the angel of death look like? I'm very interested. And by but how did you know it was the angel of death? I asked that because I've seen such, and it comes generationally. So I'm really interested on what this angel of death said. None of them come and say, hey, I'm the angel of death. That's not the way the seraphim introduce themselves. Just saying, Anyway, we all have different experiences, though, so I can't comment. I agree with that. The New Age thing sucks. The New Age thing kind of sucks. And it's the same stuff. And that really started in the 80s. And it's just being repackaged again and again and again. With different, now people throw in, oh, it's quantum now. It's quantum. They throw that in with the New Age and they say stuff that don't make any sense. Like I say it right now. The quantum fractals of your DNA is assisting in your ascension through the multiverse. What the F does that mean? That's just throwing word salad. And I hear it all the time from a lot of these people. They're throwing that stuff out. The helix, fourth helix of the DNA strand will give you the ability to hit the bloodline of the such and such, and then you get the Anunnaki, and you get Anunnaki, I just, I'm sorry, but that same stuff being packaged over and over again and again. And the thing Jessica and I was talking about, I can't help but laugh. People are showing these are the 4 types of aliens. Are you kidding me? The same old thing. The Nordics. Always the Nordics. Of course, the Nordics. Then the reptilian. Of course, the reptilian. Now they're on to the insects, the mantis. Okay? It's always good. The mantis is in there. Always. Okay? And what's the other one? Of course, the grays. Gee, that's really telling us something. What about those of us that have had contact with aquatics? What about, or amphibious? What about those of us that have had encounters with those that are completely non-physical? Different containers of energized plasma, high energy plasma. What about that? What about those of us that have encountered those that are microscopic on the collective conscious level? They're not talking about that stuff enough. Instead, they're acting like this reveal is going to come through little videos. I think it's insulting, but whatever. You know what I mean? At least it's, if it's opening up the eyes of those that are so blind that they can't see that there's not other life here that jumps in our own field of perception all the time. That's cool. But I sure do agree with that statement, though, John. I definitely agree with that. Hey, what's up, Soulbird Medium? That's a cool name. Thank you. Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. No, so which part I got a little carried away, and I hope I didn't offend people, but I get passionate on that when it comes to the earthbound thing. It's just gonna, I say that because I just seen some suffering. You know what I mean? And sometimes the suffering like earthbounds can inflict on the possessed, on the person they're inhabiting, it can be physical. You know what I mean? Because they join, as I've talked about before, they join at places of trapped emotion. Okay, and how each part of the body actually holds different trauma. And okay, they want me to show a picture. Okay, I'll find it. Jeez. I got pushed on that one. Okay. They keep saying this is real important. They want me to show this one. So I shall do it. And it's something we talked about before, but they're on me black ass, so I will do as being asked. Here we go. I know we talked about this before, everybody, but they want me to show this particular picture again. Okay. These are just the areas, and you've also got, organs too, that actually store different trapped emotions. And these are the areas. And, like, so for example, where you've got the anger center there, if you have an earthbound that was part of the reason it didn't cross over is because it's angry, okay, it will join with the trapped emotions in that organ, in that area there, and express itself through that area in that way. You know what I mean? Not always is it like that, but it does happen, I promise you. So it's good to familiarize ourselves with the different areas of the body that store trapped emotions, because not just do the earthbounds do it, the demonic do it. And they know us good. They know how to push things and create traumas that make us store more trapped emotions that they can slightly feed on and give them places to join, areas to join. So it's very, very serious, very important, to know about trapped emotions and the areas of the body that they can be. Okay. And it could also be something, to the area where maybe it's just the person themselves had a heart problem or they had a broken heart. Somebody broke their heart before they died. And that's part of the reason they didn't cross over. Then they go to the person's heart center. You know what I mean? And join in that area. So it's just, something to be aware of. And another way to protect ourselves is to try to free the body of trapped emotions. Ooh. All right. SP, thank you for being here. Oh, it's all right. No problem being late. At least you came. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate anybody who goes back and watches these or anything. Cause I swear I didn't think anybody would watch any of the lives I did. I thought the few that did would probably not like them anyway. So I appreciate you going back and checking it out. No, you don't just reincarnate. Okay. And I'll tell you, I've done a video that is called What Happens in the Light. Okay. And I've done enough of these crossings now, I can tell you, and enough of past life regressions, especially. And during the past life regressions, I ask every time. Okay. And when a person dies, like from even a previous life on this planet, they don't always come back here. They go somewhere else to a different. I've had people describe different universes to me. All right. So it's a matter, but every time it is a choice. And look, I directly ask. And there's probably somebody in the chat right now that has been a session with me, and they know I asked during a past life regression. I say, hey, one thing is, hey, is your guide, because a guide, if you do a life between lives correctly, the guide will just come without you having to say, oh, is that your angel? Do you see them? They just come and start helping. Okay. And I will ask, hey, is the guide making you incarnate over here or making you reincarnate? They know it's my choice. Another one I ask, hey, is the light making you reincarnate? No, it's my choice. I get that every time. And the look on their face is normally like I'm an idiot for even asking. It is their choice. I've heard that every person. Maybe Jock Doubleday is in here. We'd done a session and he was different, where he went through the incarnation process from life to life, from other existences, was a little different than what I heard before. But at no point was he being forced into anything. You know what I'm saying? So that's just one thing. Just because you go into light doesn't mean you automatically reincarnate. That's a lie. That is a lie. I have yet to ever encounter that in any of my past life regressions at all. And what happens is most of the time when you actually die, you go to this place, and I've talked about this before. It's the place of I call it the place of translation and reconfiguration. And it can be when the guide comes or whoever comes, you go there on your own, whatever the case is. It's a place where there's it can be an office where there are these books that are your different lives, and you pull one of them, it's this life, and you go over all the choices you made and the impact they had on others and kind of absorb that into your soul matrix. Okay, it becomes part of your soul life experiences. And so that's one portion of that. And then after that integration, then they choose where they're going to incarnate. I've had, some people, you do a life between lives, and the last life they start expressing to you was somewhere completely foreign in terms of planet, in terms of area of space. And it's things that we never heard about, species that we've never heard about, that are part of this galactic collective thing, or galactic, I guess we call it a collective, extragalactic collective. So that's one thing there. So by no means does it mean immediately you incarnate back here, unless you choose it. And I hear a lot of people saying other things, but I have not yet to find that. And when it comes to people, oh, I died, I had a horrible experience, and I went to this hellish thing, don't doubt that. But I got two questions on that. My first would be, have you dealt with your own demons? Have you dealt with your own negative self? Have you cleared that? Honestly. Number two, are you emitting frequencies from biosensors and semiconductors? Have you underwent a non-linear junction detection scan to prove that that's not neuroprogramming that you went through? I've talked about before how they're intercepting the near-death experience to make it negative for people. And I think they're using that technology to do it. So those would be my two questions for people that have experienced this horrible negative thing at death. They were trying to eat my soul, and they were pulling at me and all this other stuff. Have you dealt with your own stuff? Have you really dealt with your own negative identities, your own negative self, your own negative cognition? Have you dealt with that? Okay, that's question one. Number two is, are you emitting frequencies that you might be turned on? You might be activated. Non-linear junction detection scans will prove that. So show me that you're not doing that. You're not emitting frequencies, and that you've really dealt with your negative self. Then we'll take it to the next level. But most people don't go past that. And remember, it's just a few people that are talking about their negative experiences that has woven the whole fabric of it. So, food for thought on that again. I'm going to go back down. Oh, whoa, it's way gone low. So-called masters are really interdimensional entities feeding on fear energy. That is why they're appearing cloaked themselves. How many of these entities have you dealt with, though? I have to ask that question, that you can prove them to be these entities feeding on. I've dealt with a bunch of entities, both extraterrestrials and angelic style, okay, super nanofem, whatever you want to call them, and it wasn't feeding on me. It wasn't feeding on my energy. In fact, it was an energy giving. They were help save me. You know what I mean? So it's a matter of the exchange that we deal with. And mostly what people are talking about that, it's also, when you're really dealing with one of these entities and you're out of body like I was, in terms of like partially dead, your awareness and discernment triples. Mine did. I could certainly tell you that the beings I was dealing with was irradiating first so much source love that I think that it could have almost killed my physical body, in terms of they had to have been tapering it down. But they used it to heal me. Period. That love energy that other people that really took a minute and stopped and prayed for me, okay, and channeling that into my healing. And you can't tell me those were entities feeding off me or negatives at all. See, there's a very strong line there. And when we start dealing with these beings that are right next to us, quote unquote, the inorganic beings that filter through here all the time, those are the ones that are tricking people. And like a big one is in channeling. Okay, channeling is, man, half of that stuff I hear is bull, man. I sit up here and just go like this, oh, good day, and then start talking weird, and that must be legitimate, right? I mean, come on, we don't know who those beings are. They don't know who they're talking to on the other side. You've got those beings that know us, the ones that are right next to us, they know us really good in terms of they know how to trick us. They even provided us with our religions. Okay, so when it comes to that, these people channeling, they don't know what they're channeling, who that is on the other side, what that is on the other side, and they would know exactly how to trick us. Like calling in whoever it is that just passed. You don't know that's that individual. What how do you know that's that individual? And why did they just come to you? You know what I mean? And it's somebody that's known in the in these community circles and glorified. Okay, so that's why I bring that up. But as far as the tricksters right next to us, yeah, they're right here, and they're doing it all the time. Ouija board. You know, I mentioned on Jessica's show the other day that I was listening. I like Preston Dennett, the work he does. I think he's great. He was talking though about how Ouija boards are just a knock on the door to these inorganic beings that are right here, you know. And a lot of these little things we use, pendulums, table tipping, whatever. I mean, it's right, knock on the door to those beings right there, right next to us, and how accessible they are. They're very accessible from this realm to where the other beings that are in the divine field, these other dimensions, you know, the higher ones, like I mentioned before, you know, I don't buy what our science says about dimensions. You know, like there used to be when I was younger, they did, everybody knows there are only 5 dimensions. You know, that's not an old science fiction deal, but that's not true. The beings I dealt with, it was Yandar that said that start looking at the 16th dimension and up, is what he said. And then taking it to, you know, something as far out as the Bell 2256. And when I started talking about that, that's when Rudy Shields, when we were talking privately, told me, Barry, they're talking about another universe. They said they didn't exactly call it that, but that's another universe. And he broke down scientifically why. I had to kind of accept it. It was beyond my level. You know what I mean? Anyway, so that's just something I just want to bring up about that, is that when dealing with these cloaking entities, use the discernment of the ones that are these neighbors right next door compared to those that are actually higher beings. But they're not as easy to contact. They're not as easy to come through. You know what I mean? Whether they be light beings, angelics, extraterrestrials, multidimensional, whatever. But the distance is further. And you know, something I'll add on that, John, is that years ago, no, decades now, Jesus, I read a book by the poet P.D. Ouspensky, and it's called Talks with the Devil. And during this, like a channeling of this demonic that claimed to be millions of years old, okay, not billions, the first thing it was saying, well, there's no such thing as God. There's no such thing as God. But there is an abyss between us and them that we can't cross. And then it started talking about that in the Garden of Eden, unquote, that at night they would try to attack Adam and Eve and their followers, and a pink cloud would come and surround them and take them off and take them across the abyss out of their range. It talked about this happened like at night, and then how they had to seduce Eve by eating meat to gain access to her body. That's what that book said. And you know, when dealing with, I've said before, this book, one good section is the Adam and Eve section of this book, where I'm sure they're talking about Inky and his wife and the other cat. I'm sure that's who they're describing in the Garden of Eden of this book. It's Inky, you know, and Inky was technically the god of fertility, right, and or of sperm, pretty much. And this book here describes Adam and Eve as genetic uplifters that are sent to every mortal sphere when they reach a certain place of evolution. Okay, and that there were these genetic uplifters. And when you look at the stuff I've done a video over, you're looking at some of those tablets and some of those hieroglyphs, it shows Inky going through a ceremony before he comes to Earth. And this book talks about that, about Adam and Eve. It calls them the material son and daughter that come from a planet, Adentia, around galactic center. Anyway, food for thought on that. Interesting chat, y'all. Wow. That's all right, brother. Appreciate you being here. Thanks for coming. You always have interesting perspective. Done a lot. You got a lot of field research on Sasquatch. I always respect everybody that's done that, my friend. Right on. Do you know anything about what he said about Helen, or looked into that at all? Like I said, again, that's a little beyond me, but I couldn't find much. And that's something that he took from Kemetic knowledge. Okay. And that's where I think his work with Credo Mutawa needs to be really acknowledged. It's black knowledge. But the first people to say that, okay, was that actually the beings inside of Earth are called Saurians. And the Saurians were Earth based reptilians that would be like connected to the Hadrosaurus. And there's that other before that, even the Hadrosaurus, but they were the ones that would have formed in the human form, and that's what these beings were related to. They were Saurians, and that it was the cataclysms that Randall Carlson talks about that drove them underground. Okay, and then you have these Dracos, which is so popular now, but also there's gosh, it said also, like the brothers were saying, that Kemet was saying also there were reptilians in Sirius too. I believe that they came here and they started interbreeding with the Saurians, and that's where you get all these other species of these reptilians here. That's that's what was said. But when it comes to that, I think a lot of credit should be given to Credo and to Black knowledge about that, because it's something that's not everybody talks about the Native Americans, their information, but very few talk about indigenous African knowledge. So I think that's just important. But thanks for bringing that up, though. Not sure what that is exactly. I've heard that. The tails need to be cut, the blue bloods and all that. Hmm. Not heard of that. You know, I gotta tell y'all, don't hate on me, but I think the reptilian thing is greatly overemphasized. And I think half of it is partial BS. I was gonna be real with you, okay? I've had encounters my whole life, never encountered a reptilian. And when I reached out to people asking those that have encountered one physically, like actually seen one on a ship or been abducted by them, it was very few that could respond yes on that. Very few. Yeah, and I got a ton of people saying no, but I saw them astrally, and that goes real good because you've got Credo saying how the reptilians join with people on the chakras and things like that. So that gives validation to that and the oversight, the picture and all that. All right, but I still think that look, when it comes down to these entities that are really controlling this place and that are really keeping humanity suppressed, I think they're way more than just any reptilians. Okay. And I've heard before years ago, I always heard, oh, reptilians are a lower vibration that allows they can be just entities can jump in them and they can't protect themselves like we can. And they can just be dominated and overshadowed like they can just be jumped by other entities and used by other entities. I don't know. Okay. But I know that just it's so influenced right now. But when I've seen the worst of these these dark entities, whether it be the flyer or the ones that are sucking people for DOR, they're not corporeal. Okay. And I didn't get no reptilian vibe from them. I got something else. I think some of these beings are not fallen. I think they're created in darkness, created in evil, created in negativity. That's where they come from, you know? And, I find it interesting that I think that maybe those that don't actually come from that don't want to go back there. When you start going to lower vibrations, I can't help but think about there's a biblical story. And sorry, I don't read the Bible enough to give you exactly what it was, but it was a story of when supposedly Yeshua had cast out these demons, and they were like begging him to not send them back to hell. And he showed mercy and cast them into the pigs or something like that. Like I said, I'm not religious, but I think that's interesting when they were asking to not be put back there. So whatever goes with that vibration is painful and unlikable for beings that are no longer there. I find that interesting. That's interesting saying. That's a good one. Is that one of those negative entities? Uh-oh, what situation, Joe? What's happening? Hope you're all right, bro. Anunnaki is a term made by really Zechariah Sitchin. His 2 books, and that has got such a life of its own now. That goes all the way to, we hear so much about these, I'm so sick of hearing about it. It's always the tall whites all the time. Nobody talks about the tall browns, the tall blacks, the triangulum galaxy, none of that stuff. It's always the same few things, and that's, Anunnaki has become such a general term for so many different species that are quote unquote ancient aliens, but they only want to address the ones that they like. No one wants to talk about the brothers that was 25 feet tall that was here. You know what I mean? I find that to me has always been such a skewed perspective in these communities. And when I first came forward, that's a major reason why. And I got told a lot, oh, there's no place for color in the UFO abduction scenario. What? Says who? Because when I was looking, I didn't have nothing to help me. Betty Barney Hill? No, my encounters weren't like that. But he's the only brother I could find even talking about it. You know what I mean? And then later on, you had brothers that started popping up when I would go to the black bookstore. The first I started seeing like Bobby Hemmett and Dr. Valentine and other people, books by them that were at that store. They were talking about it. But it took me a minute to crack into that and get hip to that. By then, it was like 1992. You know what I mean? So it's little stuff like that, or, and just all cultures and bringing this together of the different species that are here all together, especially the non-physical and the non-humanoid ones, and how that is all part of the Earth matrix, promoting things forward. You know what I mean? That's something that just needs to be brought out much more. You've got so many different species that were here, and in that way, this place is some sort of laboratory. But I think we need to know more about the individual species, where they're from. Like, for example, something else that irritated me before I came forward, I didn't hear other contactees talking about extragalactic species. Everything was our local neighborhood, Sirius, Arcturus. How come nobody's talking about Cassiopeia? I had some interacting with beings that were from that area. How come nobody's talking about Abel? The Bell Galaxy's way out there. How come nobody was talking about Virgo, the Sombrero Galaxy, and beings coming from there? Very few of that. So that's what I like to see is hopefully changing now to give us a bigger perspective of what we're dealing with. And I think the very term quantum entanglement has made it more feasible for people to kind of buy into that now. Anyway. Oh, thank you for being here. Thank you. Cosmic Joe, what's happening? Sorry, I missed what you were talking about earlier, but I hope you're all right, man. You're not dealing with entities jumping you or something like that, man. I'm not sure what you were talking about, but I hope the names were hidden. They probably were, but I'll tell you, that's another problem. I think a lot of our names bastardize the angelic realm, especially. Makes some of them seem untrustworthy, and it's the naming, I think it does a lot. Because I gotta say, when I encountered those Super Nanofim, I only got like one name. And I don't think they have names. They just have vibrations and energy, that signature of their own. So, and I honestly, I encountered that with a lot of the ET species. I've got like 3 or 4 of them I can tell you that had a name: Mana, Yondar, and that start to push it there. Alex, Allex, and that's starting to push it there. The wavy green light, Oshar, and the other one, the throne being that I showed you last week, I think, Burn Daddy. So that's like 5 names I've got. That's about it. Otherwise, all these beings, they don't have names, so at least not that I understood anyway. So that's a good point there. So a lot of them hide their names, or they've been bastardized, I think. Hey, Karen, what's up? Oh, it's all right. Thanks for coming. Like I said, I'm honored that you came. No, it was about hospice, and part of it, I've talked about TBI quite a bit. Probably too much. How come my comments are continually? What's happening? Continually what? I don't know. Something's happening there. Oh. Yeah, I met 2 walk-ins actually, and the brain doesn't have to be dead. It's an agreement between the souls. And the first walk-in I met was this lady named Tamar, and she was, she had to be in her 80s now, I would think. Back then, I would think. And I mentioned this before, I think last week, but or 2 weeks ago when I did a live. But in fact, here, I'll bring something up. Why not? We'll talk about Tamar for a second. And I'll show you 2 pictures. All right, my friend Tamar, like I said, she was very old back then, and she died probably around 2002, something like that. She was a walk-in. Okay, this lady was old, and when I met her, she would like be talking to you, and sometimes she'd just start like kind of go like that and start talking like this little girl. And she said this little girl came and helped her stay alive when she had her near-death experience. And this little girl was from a part of the light forces from, was it Alpha Centauri? It was somewhere, okay, kind of far out. Maybe it was Arcturus. I can't remember now. But this little girl at first when she did this, I thought, okay, she's I was working on my psych degree, and I was like, she must have MPD, multiple personality disorder. But at a point during the night, or during this she had a conference. This is 1995, I believe. And at this conference, she had this individual named Randolph Winters that was there because he spent a bunch of time with Billy Myers and supposedly had real evidence. pictures and stuff. So the individual that I'd had several missing time encounters with, we were no longer together, but she wanted me to go with her. So I went to this thing. And first, let me just say I was very disappointed with Randolph's pictures. They look like wedding cakes with the little sugar balls on them hanging from invisible string. And the laser gun, oh, that was ridiculous. That looked like something from Toys R Us. You know, little things like that. And I just wanted to see these ships to see if they resembled the ones that I'd encountered. All right. At the end of this conference, they had 3 women there that were psychic mediums, and they formed a circle with the 20-some people there. And everybody asked questions, like one question each, just like stuff like, you know, am I getting my inheritance or whatever. And it came to me, mine was just about light and dark. And immediately they're like, oh, you need to meet with our mediums after the circle is broken. And this circle's broken, and when it's over, and there's this melanin dominant woman named Gwendolyn that immediately, she's one of the 3 readers, one of the 3 psychics, and she was on me immediately. And she's like, you need to come back in this room with me. You know, you've got many, many friends in the sky. So I go back in this room. This is at Tymar's house. And, oh, real quick before I click off this is the book that she wrote. And my friend, oh gosh, she lives in Chicago, and oh gosh, what is her name? Oh, I can't think of it right now, but she actually got a copy of this. And she's posting, I've been reading this book. Oh, that's Tymar's book. Because after she passed, her family, I understand, did not like what she was doing, was not into this stuff, and tore up all of her material and got rid of it. So anyway, that's her book right there, okay? And that's describing her experience and stuff. And real quick, I'll show this other one. Oh, sorry. Oh gosh, I'll find it. There it is. So anyway, so this woman, Gwendolyn, says, go back in this room. I go back in this room, and on the wall, Tamar has these 3 large collages, okay, that have all of these different beings on there, like maybe 12 sketches per collage of these different beings. All right. And this woman, Gwendolyn, says, you know, which one do you feel the most connected to? And I went up to one. There was another one that had on a similar outfit to this, but it was even more, it was darker with these like greenish eyes, okay, much more melanin dominant than this one. But it had, its uniform looked quite similar to what, those of you that are familiar with the Public Enemy, the PE had these dancers behind them that was called the SW1, the Security of the First World. And there were these brothers that had on these outfits, these militant outfits, and they'd be dancing back there. This being had on, the hat especially looked similar to that. Okay, and I pointed to that one first. And she gave me that name and said, I'm not surprised you said that. That's one of the heads of this entire light confederation thing or whatever. And then she started pointing to this one. I connected with this one too. That's another one of the leaders. This one was named Benzon, Benzon. Okay. And I remember when this woman was intense because she started telling me, so she said, when you came in, you have so many angelics and extraterrestrials with you that there was almost no room in the room for everybody else's. And she goes, right now, there's so many of them talking to me, but there's 1 or 2 that are stepping forward. And she started saying this one is named Yandar. And she couldn't possibly have known that name. And when she started saying, and he looks more like this, and she pointed to one that was this thing that looked like this blue Gumby. And I'm Blue Soul Group, but it looked like a blue Gumby opposed to the insectoid that I was familiar with. Okay. And she said, don't pay attention to its bodily appearance as much as the light, as the light configuration behind it. And then I started noticing each one of these pictures, no matter what the being might look like, humanoid, inhumanoid, had these different auras around them, the different colors behind them. Pay more attention to the colors, she was saying. And she named a couple, and a couple of things she said to me, like, she said, they say that you know about organ rejuvenation, and you need to build those machines, they'll work. And I started tripping on this woman. I never told anybody that. No one knew that stuff. Then Tamar comes in, and she's the little girl, though. And the little girl looks at me and says, you've hurt some people. They're very hurt. I said, what are you talking about? And she says, you ran. You said you would never run. You agreed to do all this work before you incarnated, and then you call them in, and when they show up, you run off. And okay, that's true. I couldn't believe it. My mouth really fell off because I was out practicing the gate of power, Carlos Castaneda's deal that I think comes from the Great Walkers. And what that really does is shut off your internal dialogue. I get done during this gate of power, and I start seeing UFOs and stuff start manifesting. Ships start manifesting out in the field, and I see them out there, and they start coming close. I can hear that buzz, that little whoop, 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 whoop. And look, screw the gate of power. My black ass ran like Carl Lewis back to the car, and I took off and was gone. And look, just it's the matter of sometimes those ships come too close, and I'm missing like 4 or 5 hours of my life. You know what I mean? You see things like, you're on a ship, but it starts getting fragmented with time. Excuse me, I was dealing with these other experiences, and I just didn't want another one at that point. So I did run. It happened like two times maybe. And there's no way that this woman could have known that. She said, you ran. You said you never do that, and it hurts them badly. And I already had experienced, these beings were telling me that it hurt them because I didn't believe in myself. And I said, I do, but they said, but not really. And they were awakening the light quantum of my DNA, unquote. Anyway, back to Tamar. I never told anyone that. And she's telling me, she's like, you can come back, and I'll take you back up if you want. Come back here when the conference is over at a different time, and you could go back up physically if you want. And I never actually took her up on that, and she died probably not long after that. But anyway, so this is just Benzon, and she said he was the head of one point of these light forces. And my friend, her name is Tamar, she's really cool Muslim. Afaya is her name. Afaya Muhammad, she got the picture, and she posted this picture and also the book. She said she was reading it. It just blew me away to see somebody got a hold of one of Tamar's books. But everything she talked about was concerning these light forces. And she was always putting the emphasis how a lot of these extraterrestrials are light beings, So that's another thing that, we just put on there. But I just wanted to just mention that. Anyway, she was the first real walk-in that I met. And it was really interesting. So it wasn't MPD exactly. It was something totally different. Boom. Okay. Anyway, good comment on that, John. See a lot of talk of Azrael. I'm not really popping those up because I don't know, as far as I know, isn't that a negative being? I don't get really into that. I try to keep my distance from all that negative crap. Another reason why they don't assault me a lot, I really, really try to keep my vibration out of that. That's why I won't talk about it now. I'll expose things that are like their strategies. I've done several videos. If you go to this channel and go to negative inorganic beings, there's probably, 20, 30 videos there. And what I do is expose the strategies that they use. And believe me, those videos brought me heat for people who got really upset that were into that, or they're being used by those beings. I started getting bad emails and all sorts of stuff. But that's stuff on there. And it's you just need to stick to talking about UFOs. I got comments like that, Anyway, check out the negative organic being section of this channel. There's stuff on there that might interest you. A lot of the tactics that they use that I think aren't talked about openly enough. You know what I mean? Yeah, she hasn't come on. I've not seen her yet in there. She might have had something to do, or she said she don't want to hear me ramble for 2 hours. Oh, nice, 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 nice. Nice comment on that. Nice, nice, nice. I can dig that. I dig that. What a great group. What a great group. Hey, that's all right. Thanks for being here, Leah. Thanks for commenting and being a part of the group. I appreciate it. I know you've had some interesting experiences, so thank you for sharing. I know. Oh, thank you, Comfort. Thank you. I think I'm about caught up here. No, I'm not. Oh wow, I'm still behind. Oh, that's cool though. Oh, I'm way behind. Jeez. Oh, sorry everybody. I thought I was I thought I was caught up. I'm not. I'm way behind. Oh. Oh, wow. Okay. Uh shit. Sorry, y'all. Man. Oh, sleep paralysis. Well, that's interesting. Now, John, do you think it was like maybe an incubus or a succubus, something like that? Was or That's interesting. Wow. Sorry, I'm asking like 20 minutes late, man. Oh, sorry. You guys are having a great comment, man, or a great, 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 great chat. Sorry, I'm so far behind. I'm trying to pull some of them up. Well, major stuff happens. That's when stuff really started happening to me hardcore around 5 years old. Like stuff at night, not waking up at home or on one of those craft, or then at 7, it seemed like it like escalated at 7, especially. Oh, knowledge to credo. Well, I can dig that. Thanks, Urso. I thought he gave really good information. And him and David Icke's collaboration was really good. I think bringing that stuff to the world for both cultures, I thought that was really good. Those interviews are still good to watch. Yeah, and what I found here and through my work, and look, I had to adjust my perspective to match the facts. Um, I thought this was a prison planet always, and that there was lost souls just based on the loss of soul memory and other things and the horrible things we see these beings and incarnate here, like you and I, that are some sort of demonic faction that are destroying the biosphere. I always thought that this was a prison planet, probably. Then I started doing the work, especially the regression work, and I had to reform it. This is a school. But I will say, man, it's the school of hard knocks squared, like times 20. I mean, this is the school of hard knocks. It's like, man, anything you need to learn in as far as suffering and humility, this place will teach you. You know what I mean? It's got plenty of trauma for everybody down here. It just walks around like a member of the population. But I had to change it to realize that this was more of a school than a prison, and that we do have the ability to leave if we want to on the soul level. But it's like, do you agree with yourself to leave? You know what I mean? The self. Are you done what you set yourself here to do? If you didn't, you'll come back and maybe learn it. You know what I mean? So that's not a prison as much as it is a school. Just a hard one though. Lord knows nobody wants to fail again. But it's like, if you don't want to come back here, you don't have to. And people that wholly don't want to, excuse me, they don't have to. They go to the place of translation and reconfiguration, then incarnate somewhere else on another level of Bardo, maybe another physical planet. It just, it's up to their soul. And believe me, I tried to find something different. And when I find something different, I'll tell you all. I'll say, hey, look, I found somebody that would. But so far it's just, oh, hey, thanks for being here. Susan, thank you for being here. Oh, Susan, I think Susan Long, right? Good. Thank you for being here. Susan, you sent me a message and I don't think I answered. I apologize. It was a condolence, I think. Thank you. I got a little behind. I got a bunch of messages, but thank you for everybody that gave a damn about my father passing. So, Shadow Blob. Well, that's interesting. Wouldn't mind hearing more about that. Oh. Oh, man, I think I went too far back. I'm sorry. Yeah, it would be Credo info right there. Astrally, meaning that they lock on, but I've seen shadows do that too, lock on to people's sex chakra. And that's what Credo would always put about them in that illustration. I'm sure everybody's seen that illustration, but I guess I'll slow it anyway. Oh. Well, I guess maybe I won't. I know everybody's seen it though, but it's David Icke and Ike. Sorry, David Icke and Credo's illustration of them act. Oh, here it is. I did find it. Oh, I found it. Here it is. I know everybody's probably seen it, but just in case anybody hasn't, it's just, or even if you have, it's just, I think, good to show. Now, right there at the bottom right, and I've seen shadows doing that. The shadow that I saw, it was one of the more spherical ones or oval ones. It attached to my coworker's, the top of her, like her chakra or top of her head chakra, a little bit above the head itself. So it's definitely on the energy. Then it elongated right about to where you see that thing attaching right there, the sex chakra. I have seen doing it. Now, out of that shadow, I didn't get necessarily a reptilian feeling from it. It just felt like a negative, dark, inorganic being. And I know that's what they're all doing. And like I said before, that this was a bowling alley I worked at for 10 years when I was in high school and college. And she's my coworker. They're all bowlers but me. But don't get it wrong. The bee has a serious Brooklyn you wouldn't believe. Anyway, but but she was bowling. She got what you call a turkey. What is a turkey? It's like 5 strikes in a row, or is it 3? She got a turkey. It was flashing up there, and she was just knocking the hell out of those pins. She was a good bowler too. And I go down. I was like, man, hey, Trish, you all right? And I remember looking at me. She's like, oh, Barry, I think it's just the stinking thinking is getting to me. It's that damn stinking thinking. And she was getting close to a divorce, which I didn't know at that time. But it was obvious that this thing was triggering her emotions in terms of her this thinking. It was putting negative thoughts in her mind, and that's what this feeding it was doing was. And that proved that as mentioned, some extraterrestrials too start as negative thought forms, and then they start building enough energy to manifest through your own pineal gland, using that as a wormhole to start manifesting things out here in the third dimension and having effect on third dimensional things. So, anyway, so I'm sure everybody's probably seen that, but it's still good to just show. I think this is that. You know what? Yeah, fuck it. I'll show it anyway. I don't care. This is one of those pictures from that. That guy, David Chase. No offense, I'm not a big fan. When I tried to actually talk to him when I first came forward, he arrogantly acted like I needed information from him, like he was going to teach me stuff, and I was invited to ask questions. Questions? Oh, it was irritating to me, Anyway, but point being, this is one of his illustrations, and he apparently has had a lot of contact with reptilians. Couple of different types there. I find interesting. I don't see the winged Draco type, but some of the others, interestingly enough, because like I said, I've heard they come all over. You've got the Lacertophiles, you've got the Matilda Elroy, McElroy, you've got Credo, You got several of these things. Even the first time I'd heard these things mentioned, it was through Barbara Martinique and Bringers of the Dawn. She kept calling them the Lizzies. Then Alyssa Royale started mentioning them. That's what kind of had me go into Kemet and see what I could find out about him comedically. That's when I first came up on Credo. That's before he had done that thing with David Icke, but he was known to the brothers down there at the Black Bookstore. So anyway, sorry, I shouldn't have probably mentioned anything about the author of that, but couldn't help it. I had a point where these people put a bad taste in my mouth. I just don't care. I don't owe none of these people. I owe none of these people anything, and half of them are full of shit. So anyway, sorry. Okay, back forward here. According to this, Inky would have been Adam. Inky would have been Adam, material son that's sent here for biological uplifting. Biological uplifting, already seated, and they would have came after what this book calls the planetary prince. Caligastia is what they call him, and his non-corporeal staff that came with him. Those ancient aliens they're talking about a lot right there. It's an interesting book in that way. Like I say, it's too much indoctrined with this neo-Christian thing or whatever, but interesting information though. You know what I mean? A different take on it anyway. That's interesting. You know, I was talking last week about the TARDIS and how the doctors in Doctor Who, the doctor's TARDIS is like a Type 40, and they say it's obsolete rubbish. It's real old. That model's been out of service for like centuries and centuries. But supposedly the newer TARDIS, like the new ones, like the Master's, even more advanced than that one, when they would be like here on Earth, you would see this ripple on them. Even though the chameleon circuit is working properly, you would see, so let's say it's a cabin or whatever, but every now and then you see a ripple in it, like a temporal distortion. I thought that was pretty interesting, you know what I mean? But since the doctor's is stuck, an older model, you don't see that ripple in it, like almost the cloaking technology provided by the chameleon circuit. Because supposedly the outer plasmic shell of a TARDIS is all that exists as a real space-time event wrapped around the interior continuum, which is like a pocket universe, is what we call it now. Talked about that last week, so I won't go over that. Showed some cool illustrations too. But when you say wavy like that, that's just what that made me think of. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, like unfortunately, I'm not an expert on biblical stuff that much, so I can't tell you where that was. I just remember reading it. Thank you, Jessica. And I got to do more there now that I have more time that my father's passed. I'll be able to actually do more on Patreon. I'll probably start going live there once a week, and I like here, but in a different way. There's only a few people there, so maybe I can, give some good information or do some interaction stuff. I'd really like that because the people on Patreon is the only reason I've still been able to do this stuff. So you have no idea what I have, the appreciation I have. Yeah. Hey, Susan, have you seen those ones that look like those things on the Matrix? Those things. I'd seen something similar. Susan, I saw something that looked incredible like this. Hold on, if I can find it. And it was during a session. It was like what was it? It was like a past life regression, or it was something. Not anyway. It was definitely not any kind of an exorcism or anything like that. And I saw this thing on this client, and I mean, this was an in-person session, okay? And it was this thing, and it was a trip because it looked like this with the salt vampire from Star Trek, the original series. And it looked similar to that. The only exception was over that mouth, it had these 4 flaps that were opening and closing, like 2 on where the nose thing is. There it was like the 2 nose nostrils. It's like these flaps and 2 flaps from the bottom, and they all 4 would open and close, and sometimes not even in synchronicity. But it looked very much like this thing. And I'll tell you, once you see it, I couldn't unsee it. And I was sitting by a very large phantom quartz crystal skull and a large phantom quartz cluster that I'm pretty sure was keeping this thing from trying to get at me. You know what I mean? Because it kept looking at me, and plain as day, and I couldn't unsee it. People say, did you exorcise it? Did you get rid of it? No, I did not. I was there for a past life regression, not to exorcise this demon. And I'm going to tell you, this thing was so entwined in the client's energy field that I think, excuse me, I think it would have taken a team to get this thing out of them. Okay, like maybe a shaman, a priest, an exorcist, energy worker, maybe even the famous, what is it, chaos magician. I mean, it may have taken all that to get this thing off. And there's such a thing that I believe in: choose your battles wisely. I was not there for that, and all I could do is give them a warning that they need to get some serious work done. You know what I mean? But anyway, that's one of these things. And this individual, I think, probably grew up around a portal, probably near their house. And, a lot of these portals, a lot of times you have negatives that come out of them or hang around them, that are already earth negatives or from somewhere else, but they hang around these portals. And I think this is something this individual caught from one of these portals. I really do. And it was projecting just negative stuff to them their whole life, or their whole life, and a lot of fear, a lot of panic, a lot of suspicion, and things like that. It was really pushing it hard, and just very much thought the world was out to get them. You know what I mean? I'm sure this thing was doing it and feeding on them constantly, just so entwined in their energy field. It was terrifying. You know what I mean? I'm looking at this thing, honestly, it was terrifying. It's just staring right at me. And I knew it wanted to kind of jump over and jump to B-Dub, but it wasn't able to do it. Part on my protection and will, but I think the crystals were helping too. So I just kind of closed that session down, said, hey, go get some help on this, and got the hell out of there. Took my little crystals and hit the road. Anyway, I was curious if you saw something like that before, Susan. And I've seen the other ones that look like the things on the Matrix, those spider things, but I try to keep my level above messing with those things. Oh, there's somebody else. Hey, thank you for being here. Interesting. Thanks for being here, Sadeo. I just messed that up again. Oh, no. Boy, it don't take much for me to mess that up. Damn. Oh, sorry. I just flew through a bunch of these. I don't know what just happened. I'm sorry. Interesting. Whoa. Whoa. Sorry that happened. That sounds very, very dangerous. My God. No, it's interesting because you've got, Egyptian stuff all over the planet. And when I was in Australia, the Raven tribe, they had those artifacts that were saying that they came from the Pleiades, and that they looked just like the first Pleiadians. Those are Aboriginals, and the first Pleiadians were extremely melanin dominant. I saw somebody mention that earlier. Yeah, so that's just something we don't hear. You assume all the Pleiadians look like Fabio and Christy Brinkley. That's just what our media shows us. Anyway. Oh, I'm sorry, Susan, but it's about, like I said, it took me a minute to shift to it was not prevention anymore and comfortability. You know what I mean? It took me out to really get into that frame of mind, but it helped once I did. So, and my condolences, and hopefully yes, prayers definitely. Oh, welcome, welcome, welcome. Yeah, I've heard of that happen before. So, question though, was it actually physical transformation that you're able to touch, or was it a holographic overlay? Thank you for sharing that. No, the Andromedans. No, it's the galaxy. Um, Karen, hold on, I'll show one of the last thing here. I'll try to anyway. Ah, there it is. If it'll let me, because that's a great question. I like that question. Really good question. Um, okay, Karen. Uh, in this situation, they mean the galaxy itself. Okay, the Andromedan galaxy. And I have encountered Andromedans before, and it was during this experience. Okay, you've got in the back there, you've got Mana, who is not Andromeda, not from Andromeda, but this is again an alliance we're dealing with. But the Andromedan was this being standing in front of Mana, okay, with the pear type head, and I kept getting off this being it was some sort of medical, like a doctor or a nurse, and it was standing there like supervising. And then you've got the little blue guys, and I was in communication with the little blue guys. It's like they were all kind of, and the ship itself were communicating almost simultaneously, if that makes sense, or like collective in a way. And that showed how alive these ships are. But these little blue guys, and I'm getting off them and the guy in the middle there, they're showing me like an image of this spiral, one of the arms of the Andromeda galaxy, which is a large place. But one of the arms, they're from like one of the outer arms of one of those spirals from one of those arms. And what they were showing me was actually these Magellanic clouds that were actually portals that a lot of them can go into without a ship, and they emerge. They're different apertures, exiting apertures, and one of them was outside of Jupiter. Okay, and but due to the density and the frequencies of this solar system, they use ships still, even though they can just use their body, their energetic body to come here because it's so dangerous here and getting trapped here in the solar system. Okay, and so these Magellanic clouds they showed me, I found out later as doing research into it, are also called complex dusty plasma. Dusty complex plasmas, which is like the clouds, Kordylewski clouds in between us and the moon and on the other side of the moon. Those are also dusty complex plasmas. And that takes us into things like the Kowana ball, which is actually how much solar radiation and dust and things hit these clouds and how they actually get more complex, and how such plasma, when it comes together, might already be sentient, and the different sentient levels of plasma. And that's what that Magellanic clouds are. Those are huge, dusty, complex plasmas. So anyway, that's what came from this. And these little guys, I got asked, Karen, quite a bit, like, hey, do you think they were robots or cyborgs? They didn't feel like it to me, okay? Because at first they're all trying to get me to lay down on that bed, and that bed looked like crystals and rubies and sapphires, but they all had points on them, so it looked very, very sharp. So it's like they're trying to get me lay down on it. First, I was like, hell no, it's gonna cut my back up, and they were saying, no, it won't. And eventually I just got down on it, and and it didn't. It was kind of warm, and there was a light going like a copying machine. It's what I felt like, the light going. She kind of put it in the middle there, but it was like kind of going up and down the thing. I remember asking them, "Are you copying me?" And they said, "No, we're awakening quantum DNA, quantum light, or sorry, what do you call it? We're awakening light quanta of your DNA because you don't believe in yourself, and it's messing with some of your work. Like I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing because I didn't believe in myself. That stuff I never revealed to anyone. You know what I mean? So they were doing that, and they had these wands, and these wands looked like they was metal, like almost aluminum looking, but connected to these odd shaped crystals that to me look like quasi crystals. They had an odd shape with a little insignia, like symbol on them. And then outside of that was like these moving fibers that looked like fiber optics to me. And at one point I'm getting from these beings that like those white stripes, racing stripes on their uniforms. Their uniform is some type of a metamaterial, and that those white lines were actually connected not just to fiber optic, but to not the nervous system, the neural system, neurogenics, and the neurons of like the ship. Okay, that they're all connected in that way and symbiotically. So that's what those suits are about there. And the suits were really, really blue, like they were blue. These cats were blue. And even saying they were quite that tall is an overstate. These cats were like as the size of they were maybe up to my knee. And they didn't force me to do anything. I feel like I could have kicked one of these guys. They probably went through the wall, all three of them. You know what I mean? They weren't hostile, and I felt concern coming from them. They were doing their job and everything, yes, but they felt like they cared about me. They were concerned with their work and with me and everything. That's what I got. So I can't say they were robots or cyborgs. They felt like beings to me, individual beings. All five of them. Mana I met before on a different ship. But, anyway, that's neither here nor there. But just food for thought on that. But they were from the Andromedan galaxy. That's what I got. They were putting in my mind Andromeda Council. Okay. And I've heard about other Andromedans. We start dealing with melanin dominant, this race of androgynous, would appear to be almost female. They look female, but they're androgynous warriors with these dreadlocks, and they're from Andromeda, and they're warlike in terms of like warriors. And I've talked to some people that have actually encountered them physically. And those of you that might remember that brother, what was his name? 18 Signs of Astrology, I think it was. I don't know if he's still around or not. Never met the brother, but he disappeared for a while. I remember people asking me if I knew him. I didn't know him. And when he showed back up, he had on these big glasses, and he said that he was doing something, and these 7-foot tall women grabbed him with dreadlocks, and they took him like to some ship, and they whooped his ass again and again. He said he tried to use martial arts to get away, and he got overpowered, and he pulled off his glasses, and his eye was like, man, he had a shiner like mud, like Mitch Blood Green when Tyson punched him in the face outside of that club in Denver. He had a big old black eye, looked like Brady Bunch, like he had to put a stake on it. You know what I mean? To get the swelling down. And he said that they hurt him. He started crying. He said, "You don't understand. They hurt me. They beat me." Anyway, that was, and I talked to somebody else that said that their husband got beat up by these women. Turned around, these women were there, and they sacked him hard. So they don't like no weak men or some deal. I don't know. Anyway, that's another species concerning Andromeda that I've heard about that is somewhat popular. And supposedly those women are represented in our entertainment industry quite a bit, starting with Guinan as Whoopi Goldberg is Guinan. She had the dreadlocks. Michonne from The Walking Dead, she had the sword and the dreadlocks. Supposedly Wonder Woman, as she comes from the island of Thera where there are only women. And that's what said that these, and even taking that and connecting that to a story from Michael Desmarquet, which was Journey to the, what was it called? Journey to the 10th Planet or something. But he talked about the people, the women from Thanaba, as he called it. Journey to Thanaba, is that it? Hold on, let me pull a picture of that one up. Why not? And I'll probably get out pretty quick after that. But Abduction to the 9th Planet and the Thanabe Prophecy. That was his name, Michael Desmarquet. And I've listened to some of his lectures and stuff. I'll just flash the books real quick so y'all can get a look at it. And then, but I want to show a picture of the beings that he had described too. This is his book that I think is probably the most well known. And a lot of people, he mentions melanin dominant beings, so it got pretty popular in Black Circle contactee circles. Okay. The only issue that I have is not really with this book as much, but his other book, and I'll show that real quick. He talks about this cleansing thing too that I don't fully agree with. This book, this is his other book. Now check it out. The problem I have with this book and this account, the amount of time that he claims to have been off planet and traveling to another planet, I have a problem with. And not saying it's totally not true, but in my experiences, surviving on those ships is difficult. Unless it's a civilization that's very in sync with our dimension, our vibration. It's hard to survive on those ships for very long, let alone on one of those planets. Okay, not saying it didn't happen, but it just makes it, it's just, when I read it, it was stretching it a little bit for me. Okay. And then there was something else that he made reference of that I also think is fear mongering, and I'll just show that too. Then I'll show the beings. But he did mention that their ships look like these huge orbs, these huge metal spears. I found that interesting. Here we go. This was his deal here. Hyperspace travel, I agree with that. The mini Earth thing, combining, we'll see. Still 2028, still got 2 years for this to happen, so we'll see. But some of that, what he was talking about, this cleansing, I thought it was kind of a little bit of a fear mongering deal. Okay, but anyway, never mind that. One last picture, and I think this is the most important one actually. It's what he says these Thanaban beings look like. Okay, and this was, to me, the most interesting part of his account, besides said he met melanin dominant beings from constellation from Centaurus. Okay, he had mentioned that. In fact, was Thanaba in Centaurus? I can't remember now. Anyway, this right here is one of them. And he said he's on this ship, what he had thought was all women. And then they start talking about their planet stuff, and he called them Bacteranians. Okay, and that these Bacteranians from Thayaba or whatever, he thought they're all females. And he asked, like, the leader, is your whole planet only female? And the leader looks at him and says, there are no females here. And then he starts looking at them, said there are also no males. So in that way, he starts looking at them all. Notice that these women are not just abnormally large, like 7 feet tall or taller, muscular, but some of them have shoulders like men and have apples atoms. Anyway, he started noticing that some of them had what looked like androgynous features. So they were a planet of androgynous beings, both male and female, hermaphrodites, so to speak. And supposedly that's supposed to be what's also represented in certain andromen black females and or what black species. And but they have the dreadlocks though. And also that these two are represented by Wonder Woman. And that also goes into when it goes to the melanin dominant women that they're supposed to be the Queen Sheba was of this Andromedan bloodline, and the gray hair and everything is something that is represented by Storm in the X-Men. Storm has got the gray hair that's supposed to be represent Andromedan representation and Queen Sheba. So anyway, that's that. Great question. Thanks for that. You guys' question take me down the rabbit hole, man. It's super cool. What's up, Rosie? Oh, that's nice. That's nice. Well, I forgot what that's from. That's from a cool movie, isn't it? Base, so low can you go? Oh yeah. My action. What action? Sorry, I know what you're talking about there. I probably fell behind or skipped over, messed it up or something. There you go. The PE. Okay, I'm with you now. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. The only thing about the PE I didn't like Flav. Okay, I know he had some chicken they say was good, but I think it went down. He married Bridget Nelson, Ivan Drago's wife from Rocky Four, and they had that TV show. She's Fifi, 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 and the only thing with him, he's hanging out with Chuck D and S1W, and they're talking about real black issues at that time and these militant brothers, and then all of a sudden you got this cat, George, he didn't do nothing to nobody with that clown. What the hell? That didn't make no sense at all, man. Boy, I mean, what? He didn't even go with them brothers. That was incongruent. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But they say the chicken was real good. Kind of like Patti LaBelle's pie is supposed to be really good. Never had either. No, I'm not worried about that. I'm about to sign off here pretty quick. Everybody falls out towards the end anyway. So, thank you. I agree. I appreciate you all coming and chatting it up, man. A lot of people with experiences and knowledge that go way beyond me. Really cool. That's very possible. That's very possible. I think that's what the AI thing is shooting for. And this whole AI thing, I'm sure you all saw that one being that was sitting there warning people about AI, how it was going to take over. There was that gray being. I'm not sure if that was supposed to be J-Rod or not, but I do remember it saying that. And that, for all I know, that might have very well been real. I think sometimes the real stuff is right in front of us. Oh, cool. Friends meeting up. Very cool with that. Oh, there's Jessica. I wish you could have got you on, Jessica. I know you probably got busy. Oh, probably an organic being, I would imagine. Wow. Well, thank you all for being here. I think I've come to nearly the end of the chat. David Icke was, you sure it's not icky? And he created Wikipedia? No, I'm just kidding. I called that man icky for like, man, my God, at least a decade. I don't even know who Ben Carson is, and honestly, I doubt it. My dad looked like my dad. Uh-oh. Reptilian harassment. Interesting. Oh, thank you very much. Got a house that is on a portal or near a portal. And you know what's interesting about that, Rosie? If you got one, you've got two of them, you know? Yeah. Yeah, there's always two. And sometimes people close one portal and not close the other one, you know? Like they're like male and female kind of. Yeah, I could. If you mean that salt vampire, yeah, I ended that session, man. I was tripping because you know how it is. Once you see it, you can't like unsee it. Oh, right on, right on. Thanks for answering. Thanks for answering. And you know, at that point, it probably doesn't matter. It's terrifying. You know, at that point, it probably doesn't matter if it's an overlay or if it's physical. It's both the negative deal. You know what I mean? I'm sure it was not a nice experience or alarming to say the least. But thank you for answering that. Oh, Moon. Moon at noon. Hey, welcome. Thanks for coming by. Oh, Muriel. Thank you for coming. Yeah, me too. I really do. It's been raining a lot over this way. Cool. Very cool. Yeah, boy, that made no sense to me at all. Every time I would see him, I'd be like, oh, because they're rapping about stuff that was so serious, so militant, on point, and all of a sudden, here's this clown that reminded me more of Stebbin Fetchit than he did the S1W. You know what I mean? But I would have tried the chicken at the place that was out south. Jessica, you're from the south. Did you ever try the Flavor Flav chicken? Him and Bridget Nielsen's chicken company. I don't know if they went out of business or not, but I heard it was good. Not as good as Patti LaBelle's what do you call it? Pies though. Hey, what's up, Jessica? Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't know. I fell so far behind that I guess I'm still behind. I'm at 5:37. No, there it is. That sounds like Morgellons, accelerated Morgellons. Wow, that's what that sounds like. Wow, I'm sorry, man. Mm. Um. Uh oh. Gladys Knights. Right on. No Flavor Flav for Jessica. Oh boy, not even in Boss Man. What is it? Cobb County. No Flavor Flav in Cobb County. I appreciate you all being here. Thank you for all the condolences. This went much longer than I thought, but it was good information, good exchange. I really thank you all for being here. I'll try to do something next week. Again, I'm doing sessions. You can email me at barrylittleton13@gmail.com. I need all the clients, all the sessions I can get. It's very good work for me right now, and it keeps my mind off the other stuff, and it helps people. So please, need a session, email me, and I will talk to you all soon. Peace.